Thank you. Good morning. So it's quite fun to be here to talk about something totally different. I'm not used to talk about these things, and it's really the COVID-19 crisis that basically changed many things for many of us. So I will talk about this, broad question about doctors, science, media, crisis, and how to handle that. And basically, it's my personal views. There is no science there, and you will have to make your own opinion. So I'd like to declare some conflict of interest in some ways. I don't have any financial disclosure. I'm a pediatrician. I'm working in a public hospital, and I'm only paid by them. But I'm a pediatric infectious disease expert, so I have this, will to defend children, and this may sometimes put me in some kind of conflict of interest, which is not the kind we often talk. I'm a member of the pediatric task force, I will briefly mention during my talk, and I'm also member of the national committee that take the decision for vaccination. So I prefer to declare all that. So we have media, and media is lots of stuff. You have internet, radio, television, magazine, newspaper, and everything's mixed, and then it spreads, and it's not really controlled, as we all know. And then we, doctors, scientific experts, trying to do our job in this kind of mess, I would say. There is the science, the knowledge that progress not as quickly as we all would like to. And then in this usual game, the coronavirus came and really shook it all. So you probably are all familiar with this kind of idea. We have Yves Van Latem, who is an infectious disease from l'Hôpital Saint-Pierre in Brussels, and he's been carrying the news on a daily basis and then on a weekly basis, and now it's not as regular as it used to be. And we all know as well those figures. I suppose you all know them, the numbers, this really focus that we had during this last year, and how many deaths, how many hospitalized, how many ICU admission, this kind of stuff, which is interesting, probably important, but also quite stressing, and how we process this information, what is the impact on our society, at least raise some questions. Others, Frank van den Broek, you may like it, you may dislike him, but at least he has been a very strong health minister, very present. He took difficult decisions that we may sometimes disagree, but he's been there. And he tried to also discuss and explain. Steven van Gucht has been quite important as well as leader. Many people have been involved. I will not present them all, but clearly those information have been extremely present in our lives recently. And then there are other types of information, let's say. So this was more the official information, but I have to say I didn't see this movie. Maybe some of you saw it. So this is, I take precaution because I didn't see it. I didn't honestly want to watch it, but it's apparently full of conspirational theory and really not based on fact. But it's there, it's often discussed, it's often present, and many people have difficulties making the difference between the different channels of information. So misinformation is really an issue in our society, and we as doctors have a responsibility in this whole story. And as we will see, misinformation is often quite, let's say, sexy and spread very quickly. And we sometimes have really difficulties to fight against that. This is known for a long time for vaccination. I'm a pediatric infectious disease. I'm a strong support of prevention, immunization, education, and vaccination has been the target of misinformation for a very long time. And sometimes with some people that really have lots of echo, sometimes even in the media. And debate is crucial, and we can discuss everything, but misinformation has really some deleterious consequences. So this is another kind of media and question. So you may, I saw that one, so I feel more comfortable. Ceci n'est pas un complot. This is not a conspiracy, which is by some ways interesting. It puts really a light on the role of the media and the drama that the media sometimes have put on COVID. And in the same times, it uses a lot of tricks of movies and storytelling that doesn't please me, at least, because it's a good idea, it's a good question. I like the question. I don't really like the answer, and I really think that this is also something that really needs some critical appraisal. So the web is anonymous, and it's important in some way. So you can spread whatever you want, you can say whatever you want, and it can be disseminated. And one of the problem, in my views, today is that by the algorithm of all the social media, you basically are more exposed to what you want to hear than exposed to what you don't want to hear. And so it's really a closed network, and you may, and including myself, have the feeling that you are absolutely right in your thoughts because you just hear what you want to hear. And so we have an issue in organizing things in a way that we can debate and have a better appraisal of things and knowledge. And then on top of that, there are people who are really attracted with, you know, the whole conspiracy, the 5G with the vaccine, these kind of things that, I mean, I'm sometimes surprised by emails or communication I receive asking, is it true that we take kids at school to make experiments? I mean, come on, how can you believe that this is happening in Belgium? This is just out of the possible, but this is spreading, and some people believe that. So that's a fact, and we have to deal with that. And then, I mean, sometimes politicians are extraordinary and they do a difficult job, but sometimes they are awful and it doesn't help. So it is a large echo that goes into all directions, and we as doctors, we are really facing that as an issue, and I think this is for the long term. I mean, it was there before COVID, and it will remain after. So war, famine, pestilence, death, and misinformation. And that's really something that you need to take into account in your practice, I think in your training as well. I'm really convinced that, as I briefly said this morning, the aim of academic training must change, and you need to be more skilled in increasing your critical thinking. So different ways, you know, it's not black and white, it's not true. Doctors say all the true, and the other ones say all stupid. It's obviously not that. I recently briefly met with Bouli Lanners, and he told something really interesting. He told that he's a movie maker, a Belgian movie maker, and he told that his job was to tell lies, to try to approach necessary lies, to try to approach the truth. And that's an interesting vision. I mean, we all lie in some way, you know, on the broad scale. But then you have, you know, satire, parody. You can just, you know, instillate some doubt, but you can also go further. And, you know, that's a usual one in the mainstream media. You know, headlines. You have a title. You click on it, and then if you read the article, it objectively doesn't say what's the title say. But the title was attractive, and you clicked on it. I clicked on it, and so I feel, oh, I'm stupid, I shouldn't have done that. But that's a process. So that's not very bad, but it has an impact, because most of the people doesn't read the article. Misleading content, false content. So we go into, you know, higher manipulation. Sometimes and I know that a lot for vaccination, sometimes a figure from a paper is taken, changed, and it's really manipulated. Sometimes you pretend you have an expertise that you don't have. You know, having an expertise, you know, that takes a long time. You can really manipulate the content, or you can even fabricate content. Some movies are done by actors, and it's also present, and you can't always do the differences. And then this is sorry for the French. I see that there are a few French in my slides, sorry for that. The true and false news online spread at a very different speed. We live in a society where the punchline, the misinformation is more attractive, and objectively, and it has been assessed by serious science, spread quicker. So we are in a difficult position as, you know, reasonable doctors, scientists trying to balance things, and then we overcome by people who say, no, this is just blah, 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 and it goes faster. So it is complicated. If you don't read the news, you are uninformed, and if you do read the news, you are misinformed. And I really like that way. I mean, it's good to keep that in mind, and you can put that in the academic world as well. I mean, when you go to a teaching lesson, you are probably sometimes misinformed, and what's sure is that the information will quickly become not as true as it was aimed to be when it was taught. And then another point I think important is that we are not always enough open-minded, I think. We really tend to believe that all standards, the way we need to discuss, the way we need to present data, our vision of the world is the only one that is correct. And we have really a problem in putting the different vision in a room and to take the most of it. And this is, you can decline this you can use this idea in many ways, you know, between academy, private, industry, public, politics. It's difficult to be together. And so the way I would like to focus now, after this kind of broad of introduction, is hopes and challenge, and I try to summarize that in 6 B's. Be available, be prepared, be wrong, be simple, be kind, and be free. And we'll try to go through that. So be available, I think, so it is complicated to answer to all the media requests. I mean, it's not my main job. I'm supposed to be teaching, I'm supposed to be at the hospital, I'm supposed to be doing research, and that's what I'm paid for. And then I have this media request, and you know, it's not soft. So I got a phone call, and then, hello, can you come? Half an hour, RTBF, RTL, and say, well, no, I have my day. It's not easy, and so it is demanding. It's really complicated. It is time-consuming, but in the same time, I feel that as doctors, as public health defender, it is my duty, and it is some kind of my responsibility. Not everything. I do not accept everything, but my responsibility, I believe, is to explain. You know, I'm working on those questions for 30 years, so I have some knowledge, and I can explain, I can contextualize. When you put one number and it's a headline, you can put other numbers. COVID-19 in kids, yes, but RSV in kids, other diseases in kids, they are much more dangerous than coronavirus, and that's something that is needed. Educate sometimes, give information, training. I mean, it's complex issues, it's complex question, and sometimes even denunciate. I think if we really think that things are going in the wrong direction, it is also our duty to do something like that. So these are a few examples that's done by the students for the students, so I think it's quite appropriate. That's the postgraduate, so the young assistants in pediatrics that you will be, who spent their time to do a kind of movie like C'est pas sorcier, for those who know. So with little toys, little castle to explain the immune system, the virus, the key of the vaccine, and these kind of things. And I think that's really extraordinary because they have a very tough life in the hospitals. You will know that they do not sleep a lot at night, and they spend their time during last summer to do these movies, and I think it's really, really great. I would like to show this. So there is a website, COVID for Kids. It has been translated into 3 national languages, and the kids can ask their question, and they get their answer. So I think these are very important tools. And this is really educate, explain, contextualize. I'm a pediatrician, you know, that's my conflict of interest. I declared it at the start. And I really believe that we didn't use the kids enough for communication. The kids are extraordinary. They ask much better questions than we do because we are a bit ashamed. The kids, they go, will I die? Is it true? Do you lie? This kind of stuff. And it's great because then you can really answer in a very practical way. They're very smart and they express their smart question in a good way to spread communication. Their naivety is really good. The fact that they are politically incorrect is really good. And they are actually ambassadors. We asked for the Prime Minister to do a talk for 2 kids. We couldn't make it, but I think it would have really helped and then actually when you design communication material for kids, the parents, they're really happy as well, and they understand better. And so I think that's really something interesting. So the pediatrician from the Children's Hospital their consultation were closed during the lockdown, and so they really tried to develop a lot of material for prevention, for education, how to handle your chronic disease and this kind of stuff, and that's absolutely great as well. And then denunciation. I mean, the first lockdown, if you remember, that's a total lockdown. We started first by saying, well, COVID may be very driven by kids, and then the data came showing that it wasn't the case. Still, the schools were closed, and so we, as pediatrician, we finally wrote a national open letter, and we got strong support by the media because it was published the same day by all the newspaper, Flemish, French-speaking newspaper, signed by over 600 pediatricians. So a last consensus showing, well, it's time for the kids to go back to school because we will lose a lot. And it has had an impact, and it certainly was not the only incentive, but the school reopened. And I think it was really a great satisfaction, and this was, I think, if 1 or 2 or 3 experts would have signed something, it wouldn't have had any impact. But the consensus is very potentful. And so the task force, which was coordinated by Til Jonke, who is there, that was a way to communicate. So we had bi-weekly meetings, exchanging information, sharing science, trying to solve the problem, exchanging protocols, prevention in the school, in the creche, and everything. And the task force, which was quite organic, you know, we weren't prepared for that, received a lobby award in 2020. And I think that's something good to have been able to share the voice of the children in a crisis that did not always put them on top of the list. Be prepared. So lots of time pressure. It's often in a hurry, or if not always. Sometimes it's quite emotional. I've been told that one child died there. What do you think? Or I would like you to comment on the decision of blah, blah, blah. It's sometimes quite emotional. sometimes they ask for your personal opinion, which in my views is not really interesting. I mean, if I can be the voice of a kind of consensus, then yes, I'm doing my job. What I personally do believe is not that interesting, and sometimes it's not always clear what they request. And so to try to do the best you can your job, you have to have the facts and the number right. You have to go back to the number, to the facts, and try to be more accurate, the best accurate you can. And you have to know that you will be cut. We talk, they come, they film, they interview, they listen on the phone, and then they cut, and then the editor cuts again. And so that's the rule, and you know that you will be cut, and what you hope is to have the cut that allows you to share your message. And there are a few tricks. Before the interview, you have to have a discussion with the journalist. This is informal, this is off record, I would say, but it needs to be detailed. And you need to explain what you want to say. I see this as a problem, and I want to say that. And you have to listen what he or she wants to discuss as well. So what do you want to know? What's your question? What's your problem? And then you can prepare the interview by, if you don't have the data, searching the data and the facts. And honestly, I have had very rare bad experience when I had the feeling before the interview that we aligned, we understood each other, and this is going to be right. And really, it leads to favorable cuts, because they can, by cutting, they can say in your mouth what they want to say. Basically, it's very funny. They can just take the sentence that is out of scope, or, you know, we all take, you can cut my talk now and have a different meaning. So I think that's really important. After the interview, for some sensitive content, I'm asking to proofread what I said, because I don't want a quote to spread, and that doesn't help what I want to achieve. Obviously, you have to be respectful. You're not the journalist. You cannot change the style. You cannot change the way they want to share the story. That's their job. But you can correct for factual things, and you can do that as a they don't always accept, but most of the time they do accept. And it's clearly a relationship on the long term. They obviously are different kind of journalists, you know, some want information, someone really to dig into the data and share those data. Others want scoop. They don't want information. They just want to share a funny or a dramatic story. And obviously, you can decide with who you work or not, and you can decide that after something that didn't went well, you're not working with them anymore. And they can do the same, by the way. So, and it's fair enough. We do different jobs. Be wrong. That's not something we often say in medicine, and I think it's extremely important. So, who knows what ultracrepidarianism is? Raise your hand. Nobody? It's a funny word. I didn't know a few months before. So ultracrepidarianism comes from Latin. Not sure I really understand its Latin sentence, but basically it's someone who is in the habit of giving advice on matters that he or she doesn't really know about. And this is quite common, all right? And I would like to start by sharing this story. So April 2020, a year and a half ago, public survey in France, Le Parisien. The question is hydroxychloroquine efficient in the treatment of COVID-19? 5 of April, it all started in March, all right? Answers, 55% of people answered yes, 20% of people answer no, and only 21% of people say, I don't know. We didn't have any data. So the question had no answer. Even though more or nearly 80% of the people answered something to the question that nobody knew the answer. And that's really something we are dealing with in this crisis. And I'd like to switch media, and I want to ask you a few questions. So if you take your smartphone And if you all log on www.wooclap, www.clap/MedCup, please log. And I'll ask you this question. Don't be afraid, I will not interrogate anybody. I just want to answer, do you know what a randomized clinical trial is? Yes or no? RCT, those trials that we've been discussing so much, and that basically allows us to decide whether we treat somebody with one drug or with another. So do you know what that is? Yes or no? I give you a few seconds. There are a few other questions. You don't have, I don't want you to see the answers. Yeah. The question is not appearing? That's normal. They are hidden. I'll tell you. So we have 100% of the people who say they know that what an RCT is, okay? Which is fair enough. We all know what an RCT is. Next question. Do you have read an RCT summary? So we all know what an RCT is, but have you read an abstract at all? It doesn't work. Haha. Well, so let's do by hand, all right? It doesn't matter. It's the trick. So we all know what an RCT is, okay? Fair enough. Who have read a summary, an abstract, up to date, something in the news? Okay, half of you, let's say. Who have completely read an RCT publication? This is a Lancet paper, a New England paper, 15 pages, and then 50 papers of appendix. Okay, so let's say 30%. Who have ever, and I probably know the answer, undertaken an RCT? Who have been involved in an RCT? So, nobody. Who have participated in a RCT DSMB, which is a Data and Safety Monitoring Committee, which is an external independent committee that review all the data and that eventually at some stage say, no, you have to stop because they are bad adverse. I suppose nobody. And then, who have decided the randomization method, simple, block, stratified, unequal, depending on the prevalence, depending on the incidence, depending on your study design, you have different randomization method. Who have already decided that? Yes, one hand. And so I'm asking my question again. Do you know what a randomized clinical trial is? And so, you know, we like to laugh about French people who say they know what hydroxychloroquine is, but we all do that. And so I tricked you now, and there are really multiple layers of understanding. Obviously, we know what that is, but we know what that is at a very superficial level, and there are people who know that at a very deeper level, and that's something we need to always recall. And I'm an ultra-crepidarian as well. I tricked you, so time to show my issues. So I was a postdoc in the lab. I was working on that beautiful bacteriophage. Bacteriophage are viruses of bacteria. Okay, fair enough. They're really important, fascinating story. And I published a paper, and basically I was trying to understand how this bacteriophage put his DNA in the capsid. Okay, technical, not interesting. There are two ways bacteriophage do that. Cohesive hand of packaging strategy, COS or PAC. How do you know that? You do gel with restriction enzymes. It's not very complicated. And depending on the bands on the gel, you can decide and understand, understand whether it's a COS or a PAC. And I did that, and I say it's a COS, and I submit my paper saying that this phage was a COS packaging, a cohesive hand. And one reviewer saw the slide and say, this is wrong, it's a PAC. And he was right, and I was wrong, because I misunderstood something, and because I was at that layer of understanding, and I didn't went to the level deep enough to understand and not to be mistaken. And so I think, you know, it's a non-ending process. You never are understanding everything. And this is probably important to know, and as doctors, we sometimes pretend to know more than we really do. And this is another way to present then. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect. I think it's quite interesting as well. So this is the progression of your knowledge and skills. And when you saw 2 movies on internet, you think that you have it all. And this is the mountain of stupidity. You think you know, but you don't know much. And then if you progress and start to really know something, you start to be desperate because, well, actually I do not understand anything. It's more complicated than I thought, and it's really complicated. And then if you progress, then you get the balance between, yes, I know that, but I know that I did not fully understood that and that and that. And that's a usual process, and it's fair enough. So in terms of media, if we go back to media, I think that it's wise not to talk outside your area of interest. We sometimes hear experts talking about something that is absolutely not their area of expertise. And I think that's, personally, that's not a good idea. And then also, it's wise to discuss, to debate with the other experts. As pediatric infectious disease, sometimes when it gets a bit complicated with school, I call my adult ID colleagues to say, well, do you agree with that vision? Do you have really a different opinion on that? And I think that's really important to do as well. Be simple. You have to know the key message that you want to deliver. What do you want to say? And also, and it's related to the previous one, say when you or we do not know. Sometimes they ask for answer that we just do not know. We don't have the data, and we have to say that. Because good ideas need time. Discussion, debate, and science is slow, is fundamentally slow, and we don't have enough hours in a day to read everything and know everything. And so, how is your scientific life? You are not into the hospitals yet, but it is complicated. We rarely are in this kind of position, oh, I have the whole day to read papers and that's gonna be cool and then I'll take a coffee and blah, blah, blah. It's not like that. Our life is more like that. We're rushing, taking phone calls and then meeting on Skype and then going back to teaching and this is the reality. And it's a serious problem, really. There is this slow food movement, it's interesting, and there is something called slow science, saying that we can't press it faster than what we can. And I don't have answer to that, but I think it's an important question. And then sometimes I wonder whether we have not in this crisis tried to go faster than what we should have done. And this is an editorial that I really like, the importance of stupidity in science, scientific research. We don't do a good enough job of teaching our students how to be productively stupid. That is, if we don't feel stupid, it means we are not really trying. Science involves confronting our absolute stupidity. We are all absolutely stupid for some of the big questions, and that's fair enough. So, lesson learned. Knowledge progress is slow in essence, and the media and the society wants answer, and we understand that, but sometimes we can't deliver those answers when they are requested. And we, I think, need to fight against the tendency for rushing, for doing things half done, and this is really important. And we probably need to be productively slow, which is quite different than being slow and unproductive. You need to work hard to be productively slow. Be kind, please. We should be kind. The scientific debate is essential. I mean, we need to disagree, and this can be, discussed, and I really disagree, and we share numbers, data, vision, no problem. It's neither to better approach the truth. If you are producing results in your research and that nobody else in the world can reproduce them, you're wrong. So we need confrontation, we need to exchange, and this can be tense. You know, when you work for years on a topic and somebody disagree with you, it can become a little bit tense, but it can never become personal. We all are professional, we are working, that's our job. Confrontation is good, but when it becomes personal, and sadly it sometimes becomes personal, and sometimes you have hates, email or communication, and that doesn't help, I think. So internet rats, I wouldn't call it like that because we don't know, but there are many nice things that happen on the sites. I'm personally a little bit on Twitter, not that much. I like it for what? I like it because it gives me information that doesn't come through other channel. I'm following people I respect, and they put some light on a paper I didn't see, or these kinds of stuff. That's really potent and interesting. That's good. But there is some discussion that are just totally crazy and that become quite aggressive, quite personal, and sometimes I feel that in 200 characters or so, you can't really nicely share things. It's not entirely true, I agree, but it has a tendency to be more extreme and to lock you in a position that I do not always like. But it's certainly a good source of information. And it has been tough for some people. Some of the people that have been most exposed, they receive really lots of aggressivity in return. They did their job. I really think, I disagree with some of the experts, but I really think that they all did a fantastic job and they deserved respect. And we as doctors, I think we need to pay attention in terms of collegiality to be really to differentiate the difference in the opinion and any personal matter. Be free. Different purpose from different media format. I personally do not like the media when there are 15 people around the table and everybody has 35 seconds to speak, and then we listen to Mr. or Mrs. X from wherever in Belgium. He or she asks a question, but we cut him after 30 seconds, and so nobody listened to anybody. Everybody tried to put his little sentence, and I personally don't think it helps in big crises. It may be fun on Saturday afternoon, but to handle a national public health crisis, I don't like it. I don't go. I've been once or twice, I disliked, I don't go. And that's my right. So do what seems to contribute to your vision, and do not do what's meaningless to you. I mean, keep your freedom. I'm an academic, I'm a pediatrician, and I can decide what I do. So say no to meaningful. To say no when you need to focus on something else. You basically sometimes just doesn't have the time. For some period of the year, there are other priorities, and then the rest of the people needs to take over, and we can rotate, and that's fair. Refrain from and certainly declare conflict of interest. I think we all have conflict of interest of different kind. We need to declare it, and by managing that as a group, we can really control that things. So it can obviously be financial, but it can be just professional, pediatrician, and also on a broader scope. Some of the experts in this crisis in Belgium became really rock stars. They have, they are stopped in the streets, and their lives change for best and worse. And I think there is a kind of a star system in this game. Some people really like to be seen on television and newspaper, and well, we all react in our ways, but we have to be aware of this system as well. So to conclude, be available. I think it's important. Be prepared. It's a difficult job. Be wrong. We don't know everything, and we know at a certain layer of understanding, but we can go deeper. Try to be simple, knowing what that's the message I want to come across. Politicians are extraordinarily good in that. You know, they've been asked a question, they do not ask the question, say, oh yes, excellent question, but I'm saying what I want to say. And sometimes it's very well done, and they deliver the message. When it's too much, it doesn't work that well. Be kind. I think it's really important, and you certainly have been exposed as well to this kind of tension that is existing between people. And be free. I mean, decide what you want to do for that. Second conclusion, and that's why I'm pleased to be here. I think that I spend roughly half of my professional life in science and the other one in the hospital. And I sometimes think that there is some kind of science. When you are at the hospital, you need to deliver answer. You need to provide an answer to a question. So you need to know. That's the fact. You need to know. In science, we basically do not know, and we need to ask questions. We don't really want to know. We want to understand better. It's a non-ending process. And I think that mixing both is really important for becoming a doctor, and that we need to know, but we need to ask as well, and we need to find a balance between the two. And so we need more science, we need more discussion, we need more debate, and I think this day today is providing this vision. And then I want to share a really positive and enthusiastic vision. I sometimes feel that we live in a depressed society these days. I mean, it's quite fun. It's really fun. And it's really fun to do medicine, and it's really fun to do science. And as clinician, I mean, it's an extraordinary job where we try as human beings to take responsibility and action to help people. I mean, this is amazing. We are really privileged. It's very dynamic. You have this question, and then another patient came, and you do not understand, and it's very dynamic. You have the privilege to see human condition, different people, different culture, different backgrounds. It's a strong human relationship. If I think that's my vision, but if you want to be honest, you learn to be humble as well, because you make mistake, we make mistake, I make mistakes, and you don't succeed all the time. And it really needs to be a balanced stuff. I mean, while in science, you look for the opposite. You look for the scientific breakthrough, the new idea. Nobody did it, and this is great. It's really exciting. It's really pleasure. It needs ambition. I mean, you know, you try to develop a new treatment, develop a new vaccine, develop a new diagnostic. That's extremely ambitious. It needs intuition. You don't always understand why you are doing that, but sometimes it's a good idea, even though you don't understand why. And it needs vision. But it also needs new creativity. The old ideas doesn't work that well. We need new ideas, and we need your ideas. And then it's slow. You need patience, because sometimes some of the projects, we are running them for 10 years, and we still don't really have a clue. But it may all of a sudden turn to something really, really exciting. So I think it's really enthusiastic. And on a more philosophical side, if you allow me, I think we travel back from dream to reality, and back and forth all the time. And that as doctors and researchers, we can learn not to become enslaved to our successes or guilty of our failure. And again, trying to find a kind of balance between these two. And that's the final conclusion. I really like this. He's the man who put ultra-crepidarianism in the front of the French-speaking news. And he concluded to say, you have to be competent to know your incompetence. And I'll end on that. Thank you.